If you knew you were enough, what would your life look like? What would love look like? This is the Enough Factor broadcast, where we're redefining what makes you enough in life and in love. Now here's your host, Suzette Birnall. Hello, everybody. Woo, it is 2020, and I am recording the first episode of season 2 of my Enough Factor podcast on January 2nd, 2020. So this is definitely pre-recorded. And I was sitting here reflecting on what season 2 is going to be about. So much has happened since August 25th, when my last episode of season 1 aired. And I just feel like I have lived like light years since we last connected. So I feel like with season 2, we need to kind of start it off with what you can expect this season. You can expect more solo podcasts from me. I think that'll be so good because I want you to know who I am. I want you to get a sense of who I am, whose I am, and why I am. Okay? Secondly, there are going to be guests. Different from season 1, however, I'm a little bit clearer about the direction of season 2. So the guests that I will have for season 2 will be women and some men who have taken their evolutionary journey very seriously and have gone from ordinary to extraordinary. And they're no longer resisting the fact that they are unicorns. You know, there's a scripture in the Bible that says, many are called, but few are chosen. Well, I am going to have on my podcast people who have a sense of being chosen. It's not so much their dreams are, I'll have what she's having. It was that the dream picked them. And instead of resisting it because it didn't fit what they thought their lives were going to be, they have now embraced it fully. And they're going to tell you their story from going from I am enough to I am more than enough. That for me is what 2020 really was all about. That was the clarity I got at the turn of the decade. That it was no longer about just helping you redefine what makes you enough in life and in love so that you can experience both of those in a brand new way. That was fine, but we have all been on an evolutionary path. And I really believe that part of our birthright, part of how we're engineered, part of the divinity that we all hold within ourselves is the ability to multiply. It is not just a command to be fruitful and multiply. It is a declaration of what we've been gifted by the divine to do. It is what our purpose is. It's to find that thing, that gift, and to be fruitful in it and to multiply, to reproduce, to up-level, to make it bigger, bolder, more brilliant. And so I think just the simple year that we're in, 2020, is about duplicity. It's going from enough to more than enough. It's going from a need-driven life to a more than enough, an abundance-driven life. Okay, it's going from having so-so vision to having 2020 vision. That means you have more acuity. Your vision is more acute, right? Your context is more acute. You're more clear than you were before. You're not just trying to operate just to get by, but there is a duplicity. There is double the impact, double the outreach. It's double. You're doubling. That's multiplying. It's now no longer addition. It's no longer 20 plus 20, but it's 2020. It's multiplication. It's biggie sizing, for lack of a better term. It's a biggie sized life, creating biggie sized impact. And so those are the kind of voices that you're going to hear season 2 of my Enough Factor podcast. To start it off, I want to read from you. I have my trusty Oprah journal. You can see it's really beat up because I have really used this journal quite a lot recently. As a matter of fact, on the 4th of July in 2019, I wrote an entry in this journal that I feel really is a great way to jumpstart our season 2. I'm going to read it to you, and then I'm going to give you the backstory so that you can understand what I was writing about, the context and all that, and you'll understand why I consider this a great way to jumpstart our 2020 journey. Okay? Okay, July 4th, 2019. I finally get it. If you do well, you can flip this. You can be quality staffing. That's what God said. He didn't say anything different. It's simply been a journey to the realization that I was never supposed to be destined to do the bookkeeping. I was destined to provide the solution. I am no longer the bookkeeper. So it's time to detach from the mindset and the expectation that I am the one to perform the task. I am not the one. I am not the technician. I am the solutionist. I am the strategist. My expertise is in that. While I am skilled and technically savvy, that isn't the highest service I provide. I wrote the proposal incorrectly because I was thinking as a bookkeeper. I brought 2 personas to the table, the bookkeeper and the CEO, when I should have only allowed the CEO at the table. I should have never allowed the bookkeeper to write the terms. I see it now. I am more knowledgeable now. I get it. I am no longer the technician. I am the engineer. I am the creative. I am not the technician. I am not the bookkeeper. I've outgrown it. That's the reason for this discomfort. Okay, Aragorn, it's time to stop being the ranger and take your place as king. When I wrote this, I was thinking back over my journey You see, I started out as a temp, providing services for a staffing agency called Quality Staffing. And while I was performing the services for them, I got an aha moment. And the aha moment was, if you do well, you can flip this. Basically saying, instead of doing the work as an employee of Quality Staffing, you can become Quality Staffing. Instead of being employed by the business, you can become the business owner. And instead of you doing the job, you can hire someone to do the job. Because when I entered into that working relationship with Quality Staffing, it was because I just needed to make some money. But I knew in my heart that I no longer wanted to work a 9-to-5 traditional, conventional job. I wanted to live life on my own terms. I wanted to do meaningful and fulfilling work. I wanted to get up every morning excited about my day. And I wanted the revenues to support all the things I've just said. I was clear about that. But my money had become funny and my change had become strange. And to be honest, I no longer had the faith to hold on to my vision and to see it through without having a safety net. And so I went back into traditional employment, but this time as a part-timer. I no longer wanted a 40 hours a week job. So I worked at the most 20 to 25 hours a week. And I felt like that would give me what I needed to stop the hemorrhage of not having enough money, but yet still allow me enough creative space to be able to build my life as an entrepreneur. Life had taught me that just jumping out was not the right path for me. So I said, okay, how can I do this in a way that will calm the person in me that's watching my bank account numbers getting smaller, yet not tire me out to the point I don't have the energy to truly grow into the entrepreneur that I knew I was destined to be, and the business owner that I was destined to be. So this started back in 2012, and so it was almost 8 years of an evolutionary path that I took to the fulfillment of what God had whispered in my ear early on. And so I knew I was on the right path, and I knew what my destination was. I just didn't know all the peaks and valleys I'd have to go through, both internally and externally, in order for me to achieve the dream that God held for my being a bookkeeper at the time. Right? So I'm reflecting because I had grown to the point at the time of this journal entry, I had grown to the point of being a business owner and having hired an employee to handle the account. And so my role was more as a CEO and to provide guidance, to be a second line of support for the employee that I had hired to take over that account. But I found myself in a bit of a quandary because though she had worked with me for 3 years and had done a masterful, wonderful job, quite unexpectedly, she ended up turning in her resignation so that she could pursue a dream that she had held for the 3 years that she had provided services. And so I was in a bit of a quandary because I was grieving the loss of such a wonderful employee. At the same time, however, I was awakening to possibility, to what opportunities this closing door could afford me to bring my business back on track. You see, I had made a wrong turn. At the time that I renegotiated the contract with my client, I did not bring the CEO only to the table. Because I had provided a dual role over the evolutionary journey of my experience from bookkeeper to business owner, I brought both personalities to the table. I should not have brought the bookkeeper to the table. I should have only brought the CEO of my company to the table. But because I brought the bookkeeper to the table, I found myself in a situation where I had negotiated the CEO out of the agreement. I had put more weight on the bookkeeping aspect, and I had not allowed the person I had grown into to take her seat at the table. I had grown, I had learned, but there was still this doubt of my value as a CEO. And I secretly feared that if I allowed the CEO to fully show up, that I would lose the contract. And so I allowed the bookkeeper to have more say in the negotiations than I should have. As a result, the truest, authentic part of me was edged out. You know, they say ego is edging God out. That's what happened. I edged the authentic me out and negotiated a contract that edged her out. And as a result of that, I was performing the services of a bookkeeper and second line support with an employee that I had hired to take over the account. So now I'm back to square one, doing the same thing I was doing before. And the CEO, the authentic CEO in me, was angry with me over that. So though I still brought the best of me, the professionalism, to the table, my inner CEO resented the fact that I did not have the courage, I did not believe in myself enough to fully own who I am and let that person negotiate the terms and be willing to walk away. I wasn't at that point. I was still letting money make the decisions for me. And so on July 4th, 2019, I realized that life was offering me a do-over. But in order for me to get it right this time, I had to be very clear as to who I am. It's like if I were to use an example as a metaphor, it's like a butterfly busting out of the cocoon, right? And they're discovering the wings and discovering that they're different. But their mindset is still one of a caterpillar. And even though I was fully a CEO, I had grown, evolved, busted out of that cocoon, made the decisions of a CEO, had the mind, the thinking. I had evolved, I had grown, I had honed my skills, I had learned. I was fully a CEO by all intents and purposes. But there was still a little bit of that caterpillar mindset that I had not fully dealt with yet. And as a result, I second guessed myself. I did not understand the full value that I brought. I was still thinking the value was that of being a bookkeeper, when truly the value that I brought, that I wrote about in my trusty journal, was a reminder as I was staring in the mirror, a reminder of who I truly am, and that I needed to bring this person to the table no matter what the outcome. And it was scary. It was really scary. So the question was I going to punk out this time? Was I going to betray myself this time? Or was I going to stand up fully as the CEO I had grown into, the CEO that my evolutionary path had brought me face to face with? Was I going to own who I truly was, or was I going to cower again? So I had to make this decision before I got to the bargaining table. Because if I had not already made this decision within myself, I would betray myself yet again. So it was one of those situations where you're standing in the fork of the road. You had to make a decision. You could no longer fudge it. You could no longer rationalize it to yourself. You could no longer try to put lipstick on a pig. You had to really confront for real. Am I going to square my shoulders and own my more than enough? Right? Or am I going to cower? And so I think this is a great place for us to start with season 2 of the Enough Factor podcast, because the evolutionary path that we're on is going from enough to more than enough. And so in my solo podcast, I'll be sharing with you not just the insights that I've gained, but also what I had to confront. Because a lot of times I think we make going from point A to point B so easy. You don't know what happened behind the scenes. And for a lot of you who are realizing that you're unicorns, you're realizing that you're meant for more. You're realizing that the things that maybe you were criticized for, you were shamed and blamed for, are the very things that you were designed to hone so that you can make a greater impact in the world. But you need someone who's willing to take you behind the scenes, to take you on the inside, behind the black curtain, to take you to the struggle of the butterfly busting out of the cocoon, what it took to bust out. And then even when you burst onto the scenes, the mindset shifts, the valleys that you had to confront, the issues that you had to come face to face with. And you could no longer just use your technical skill to fudge your way through, but that your inner leader, your inner unicorn, the truth of who you are, had to confront not just your Goliath, but the valley in between. And so with season 2 of Enough Factor podcast, we're going to be confronting that valley. We're going to be going behind the black curtain. We're going to be deep diving into those places that most of us don't want to go into. But in order for us to truly own who we are, whose we are, and why we are, we have to confront those issues. And so to go from enough to more than enough is more than a notion. It's more than going back to school and getting a higher degree. It's more than, reading books. The biggest person that we have to confront, the biggest enemy, is inner me. And so part of what Enough Factor endeavors to do with this podcast is to grow us up so that we can really show up fully as who we are, no longer playing small, no longer sending a representative when our real brilliance is behind the curtain, but taking center stage in our lives with a bigness and a boldness and a brilliance that the world needs. In the words of Marianne Williamson, your playing small does not serve the world. So going from enough to more than enough is no longer playing small. It's showing up 100% authentic to the best of your ability. As the light shines, that you embrace the light and you square your shoulders and you own your brilliance. You own your voice. You own your value. You own your vision. No longer an I'll have what she's having mentality, but truly aligning with God's dream for why he created you to be born, to be an adult, to be purposeful, to be called at this time in history, realizing that it is essential to the ecosystem of humanity, to the ecosystem of enoughness, to the ecosystem of your purpose, and you fulfilling your part in the ecosystem, that it is essential that you own your inner unicorn and stop trying to be like everybody else. Stop trying to fit, stop trying to belong, and start co-creating with your divine creator the depth, the breadth, and the height of your showing up fully as the unicorn that you are. So that's what season 2 is going to be about. We're going to have some great guests who are going to share their story, but not just what got them to enough, but what helped them to truly accept that they were meant to be more than enough. I cannot wait for you to experience you're more than enough. So if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the Enough Factor podcast so you can get notifications about the episodes as they drop. I want to stay connected with you. So when you look at the episode summary, the details, the show notes, make sure to connect with me. It shows all the ways that we can be connected on social media. And also for those of you that want to be connected even more closely with me as your coach, I have connections there, links there, where we can talk further to see if we're a good fit. Because with your unicornness, any old coach won't do. You want someone whose vision resonates with that inside of you, that knows that this is the person to take you to the next up leveling, to the next place, to the next space, to the next experiencing of yourself and what you bring to the world. So I'd love to stay connected with you, and let's grow together. You have just listened to the Enough Factor podcast with your host, Suzette Bernard. To get notified of new episodes or to dig deeper into today's topic, become a subscriber. And while you're at it, tell us how we're doing and what topics you're interested in. We appreciate your feedback and your reviews. Until next time, remember, you are worthy, you are worth it, you are enough.